So what I have here is a panel on a mass that knows where it is in relationship to the cardinal directions. That is north, south, east, west, and all those spectrums of spaces in between. So what happens is that on the south side of the building I can have a very long sunshade, and on the north side I have a very small sunshade, because I live in North America where you would want to have a sunshade that's like that, and in between you have something in between. And if I select this thing and I rotate it like this, we'll see that everything also changes with it. I'm going to pause while it updates, and we can see that it is also updated here, so that we've got, is that recording? It's recording. So now I've got all of my long pieces still pointing towards the south. And I'm going to talk really fast because I'm going to see if I can make this thing from scratch for your viewing pleasure. So if we go into a new family, we're going to do a new curtain wall pattern based. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do it with a generic model pattern based, because they do kind of the same thing, but I never play around with these enough. So I've got my basic panel right here, and what I need to do is I need to get something that's going to measure an angular change, because that's essentially what we're looking at. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to get a special kind of panel for myself because it's easier to think about. I'm going to get the triangle bent like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make something that measures this angular change. I want to measure this angle right here. And I'm also going to give myself a surface upon which to make a surface later on. I'm going to make that a reference line. So first what I need to do is I need to have my special triangular work plane hack where I get myself this guy, this guy, and this guy. I'm going to create a form, and I'm actually just going to make a flat surface like that. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it something that doesn't look quite so imposing as a real flat surface. I'm going to duplicate my glass like that. I'm going to call it gone, because that's how I do. And I'm just going to make it yellow so it's transparent. It doesn't really look like it's very there, because all I want this for is as a work plane. So I'm going to select it, and I also want it to not appear when it goes into another project. So there I have my triangular work plane. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to add an angular dimension to it, and I'm going to have it based on that work plane. And I'm going to go from reference line to reference line. And why does it need to be reference line to reference line, and why is this in a curtain panel? Because these non-deletable reference lines are the only things that I can make a reporting parameter on that are going to be able to drive geometry. And now, so I have that dimension. I'm going to add a parameter to it. It's going to be an instance parameter. It's going to be a reporting parameter. I'm going to call it angle. Catchy, huh? Angle. And angle is going to drive some other aspect of this family. And what it's going to drive is, it's going to drive this. Yeah, it's going to drive an extrusion. I'm going to create a form from this, like that. And that form is also going to have an offset parameter, and I'm going to call that height. Height is an instance parameter, because it is going to be driven by another instance parameter. So if I go in here, I can just do something simple, where I can go what I need is I need this guy to be driven by that angle. And one of the things that I do when I'm doing one of these things, because I can never remember how to get angles to show up in my keyboard, I need to just copy this so I can use it as a casting unit. I'm going to say angle divided by 1 degree. So that's going to basically turn this into 130. And 1 foot times that. So that's going to give me 130 feet is what that extrusion is going to be. It seems a little extreme, so let's call it something significantly smaller. Let's divide that by 20. So now I've got a 6 foot thing, right? Now, if I change this guy, what's going to happen is I move that, and it changes the height of the extrusion. So eventually, that means that I'm going to have some angular change, which is going to drive the height of a sun shading device. Now this would be an awfully weird looking sun shading device, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that guy and I'm going to not make it visible, so that's not going to show up anywhere in my project, but I am going to select this surface and I'm going to create a form from it, right, like that, and I'm just going to make the thickness of that thing whatever the thickness I want my sunshade to be. So I'm going to add a parameter, I'm going to call it thickness, and that's going to be a type because they're all going to be the same all over my whole project, and I'm going to make this thing driven by thickness. So I've got thickness, but thickness is already this funny weird 0 value, so I'm going to call it 0.3, let's call it 3 inches, and then just for simplicity's sake I'm going to do them both connected up to that parameter, thickness, like that. So now I've got a visible thing being hosted on top of an invisible thing, and we're ready to go off to the races now. So now I have another new family that is going to be, let's do another generic model pattern based. You can do this as a curtain panel, it doesn't really matter. Shazam, like that. And now what I need for this guy is I need a way to measure angular change relative to north, south, east, west. That is going to be done this way. I'm going to say this point is going to be my golden point that is going to know where it is in relationship to the rest of the world, and I'm going to name it, I'm not going to name it, I'm going to change its orientation to orthogonal on placement, and we'll see what that does in just a second. So my special point, I'm going to elevate up here, and I'm going to take a look at some things that it can do. I'm going to take a point, I'm going to set the work plane of that point, I'm going to set the work plane of that point to this work plane right here. Bam. And I'm going to host a point on it. Bam. Like that. And now I'm going to stretch this guy out, and we can see that that point is hosted on this other guy, right? So, all is good. I'm going to take that, I'm going to connect them with a line, and I'm just going to save this guy so we know what it's called. This is going to be shade panel, right? Shade panel. Pretty simple, just one guy. I'm going to load this into my project that we were looking at before, test geometry, just to sort of see what that line is going to be doing. Overwrite existing version. Oh, I already had one. Right, okay. So this guy was already called shade panel, so I'm just going to replace it right now. Bye-bye shade panel. We're going to get something real simple now. So you can see now I've got that one silly little line is pointed east, always pointed east. There he is. I can select this guy, I can rotate it like so, and it will always point in the same direction. Regenerates a lot faster too, because it's just a line. Anyway, I'm going to use that as my compass basically to guide this guy. Now I'm going to save this guy and call him measuring panel, and I'm also going to make it just not shared because I don't really need it burbling up to the top of the rest of the family and mucking things up. So I'm going to load it into my project into shade panel like that, and I can go over here into my generic models and I can find it here and I can bring it in. Leave me alone. It's failing because why? Because when I flatten this guy out, it's going to play havoc with all of the geometry that's being driven by it, right? This is going to want to go up to like infinity or something. So the problem is that this never plays very nicely when it goes down to 0. So what I need to do is I need to make a surrogate object, which is going to be another new family, which is also, let's just make another generic model pattern based for fun. And let's make it the same geometry as the one we were making before, which is a triangle bent, right? And I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make it a dumb piece of geometry. Pow. I'm not even going to name it because I'm just using it to get to another place. So I've got family 3, which is just this guy, which is some silly little geometry. And I'm going to place it 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, is that? I think I placed this in the wrong order. what's the order here? These guys are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I need to be careful about the order that I place these things in. So I've got family number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let me just make sure that I've got everybody set on the right place. Like so. Yep. Everybody looks like they're in good position. Everybody's actually hosted where they need to be. See that this guy is still moving with that guy. Well, now I can take that guy and I can swap him out for my measuring panel. In the measuring panel, see, it doesn't want to be flat, so there's probably going to be a couple places where it might give me some hassles when I load it into the project. And I can test it right now just to make sure it's working. I'm going to want to undo this because I'm going to want this to still be in the same place. But if I go stretchy stretch, you can see that guy move, go like that, and then it gets shorter and shorter. So undo, undo. So now I've got everything still lined up. I'm going to load this into my project and see what happens. Keep your fingers crossed. Overwrite the values, overwrite the values, and you can see it processing. It's got a lot of thinking to do, a lot of things to measure, and shabam! We've got something that is pointing south. We've got, here, let's just look at it up top. And that's all there is to it. So now I've got my family, which in the southern end, which is going to be down here, has a very deep shade surface. Up in the north, it's got an almost gone shade surface because that angle is turning into almost nothing. And all the rest is just a spectrum in between. And there are other ways that you can manipulate these panels so that they can do more things, but the essence of it is right here in this bad boy right here, in this one angular measurement. And depending on how you play with this formula, it will change how it extends or does not extend that shade. You can do inverse formulas, you can do sine wave formulas, you can do logarithmic, whatever you like. But that is the basis of anything else that you might want to do with orientation. And I hope you enjoyed that and didn't get whiplash.